This is something I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for. It seems like it's been literally forever since we've heard anything regarding Blue Protocol. But you know what? Here we are. We have a brand new large update since their last stream that took place Thursday evening. I think it was 10 p.m. their time. Although before we do go ahead and jump into the video, I do want to preface the entire thing by stating two different things. We're currently live streaming on Twitch 3 times per week, Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday, every week, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find us on Twitch over at twitch.tv/MMOByte. Next month, we're going to be live streaming the brand new Genshin Impact game. And at the same time, all future Blue Protocol streams regarding updates, streams regarding the next closed beta, even open beta, even when the game officially launches, will take place exclusively on Twitch, not YouTube. And then 2, we have actually built the largest community for Blue Protocol on Reddit. We post everything on Reddit ahead of time because, you know, honestly, it is easier to just go ahead and make a Reddit post as opposed to creating the entire video. And we have a lot of people actively discussing every facet of the game literally every day. So if you're looking for a group of like-minded fans, then come on over and join us. Now, I am going to go ahead and tackle this in the order that they did on their official website. So I apologize in advance if this is a little jumbled. Do note that all of this is taken directly from the Blue Protocol website. To start things off, they begun with general feedback. It seems as though 60% of the player base played the game on the highest graphical setting. 72% of the player base had completed the story, or what of the story was available and present at the time of the beta. Dungeons could be tackled either solo with one other player or in a full group of 6. 45% of players opted to participate in the dungeons by themselves, with only 30% opting for a full group. This is actually kind of concerning to me, considering the game is supposed to be a large-scale, full-fledged MMORPG, and as an MMORPG, it should be encouraging group cooperative activities. 48% of players thought that there were a little too many monsters out in the field. 61% of players only leveled and played a single class over the course of the beta test, with 25% leveling an additional class. Only 22% of players attained max level before the beta had concluded. Interestingly, the Aegis Fighter was the most played class at 27.7%, with the Twin Striker having 25.1% of players having played it, and 23.6% for both the Spellcaster and the Blast Archer respectively. Then they went on to address character customization. Players thought that the crafting process was far too slow and unrewarding. New character customization options are going to be available. They're going to increase variation per part. There is going to be increased categories, increased selection of voice options, and content that will be found at the aesthetic salon in-game. There will also be additional costumes, and funny enough, the option to not only select, but also customize underwear. You guys know it would not be a Japanese game if there wasn't some kind of pantsu customization, right? Next, they asked about the combat, and it seems as though players who weren't very familiar with action combat struggled quite a bit with the combat system, whereas players who have played other action titles acclimated to the gameplay without really any issue. They're working on adjusting the camera angles while in combat, as some players complained it felt as though they were playing drunk. There are going to be options to have more control over what skill effects are shown in your game. Some of the combat animations are being overhauled. They're adjusting knockbacks. They're considering adding timers on buffs and debuffs, and providing specific colors to each to accurately differentiate between the two. Following this, they went on to address player-related feedback. Players were finding difficulty understanding what each parameter was effectively attributed to, so they're adding descriptions to each. They're also reworking explaining how the adventure rank functions. They're providing additional options to your profile screen. They're also adding in titles, achievements, and trophies to better show off your prowess. I mean, what better way is there to measure EPing, right? Next, they went on to address enemies. Apparently, and I can confirm this, enemies aggro from quite a large distance away, completely regardless of level, which is more irritating than anything, as you could be a level 30 player aggroing level 2 monsters from the same distance as someone of equal level to the monster. They're working on remedying this by not only reducing the aggression range, but also making them less likely to aggro if the level discrepancy is larger. They're also making it easier to discern whether enemies are lower or higher level than you. Attempts are being made to not only increase certain areas' density of monsters, but also reduce it in certain other areas. This is actually very important, as at one point during our stream, I was looking to kill, I think it was either 10 to 15 15 different boars. These boars were really far and few between. Like, they were placed very sporadically, as opposed to having them all kind of like occupy a specific area of the map. And it took literally, I think, 3, maybe 4 minutes to move effectively around the zone, and there was never more than 1 or 2 boars at a time, and there were what, like 20 to 30 different people all trying to farm the very same quest as you. Now, further down the line, when everyone is already leveled, there will be much less competition, but in the early stages of the game, that was a nightmare just trying to get those 10 to 15 boar kills. They also want to make it easier for players to more easily see and target enemies in larger groups, and as someone that had field bosses zerged by literally 30 people at once every time they would spawn, I can see how this is a bit of a necessity. Finally, it seems as though a lot of players wanted monsters to drop weapons and armor. Now, let me preface this by stating that monsters do not drop gear in Blue Protocol. In fact, there is absolutely no way to go about acquiring gear, acquiring weapons, acquiring armor outside of crafting. So I can understand why players would want this feature added into the game. Seriously, it is crucial to the role-playing experience, and I am honestly unsure of why they went ahead and removed it. However, Bandai Namco have expressed that if they provided stronger gear from bosses, people would no longer craft. And if they provided weaker gear, then the gear would essentially be pointless. The only way to remedy this is to have players work on obtaining materials from bosses and other means, and instead using those materials to craft your ideal gear. Next, they went on to cover boss fights. Apparently, players were unhappy with how little strategy was involved in boss fights. You can kind of just zerg the boss without much forethought, and then just try to take them down before you die yourself. They understand this, and they plan on adding additional strategic elements to boss fights where applicable. Then they went on to cover classes. Players were unhappy with how little freedom they had over their class. They were also upset that most of the classes share similar skills, which hinders class identity. Bandai Namco are working to provide more individuality over your class. They're working on enhancing your sense of identity in terms of the role you play. Encounters often felt very monotonous, and as such, they are reworking enemy attack patterns and increasing the individuality of each and every dungeon. They're currently working on new classes, as many players have expressed that the current 4 available are nowhere near being enough. While they are under development, it is undecided what they will be and when they will be implemented in game. Like Final Fantasy XIV, that allows you to set gear sets per class, players have expressed a want to see that feature adopted into Blue Protocol, and it has been confirmed that a function that does exactly that will be added. Certain skills are kind of difficult to grasp and master, so they're working on overhauling them to make them easier to use. Leveling additional classes is difficult considering there are very few missions to do to level. They're working on remedying this by providing alternate leveling methods over time. Next, they address the Battle Imagine. They have plans on adding more personality, more individuality to each and every one of the Imagine, especially considering that the Imagine in question used the same animations and skills as the enemy, and that kind of confused some players. Then they discussed the Mount Imagine. Players felt that there was too little stamina for your mount, and I agree. I could ride for, what, I think like 30 seconds at a time, and then I was completely out of stamina. I could no longer ride my mount at all, and that was it. I was done. It was terrible. It was crazy. They did express that this was a basic iteration of the mount system, and the stamina will regen, providing little issue so long as you aren't riding it around everywhere. Next, they discussed the sound of the music. They plan on adding additional soundtracks for the background music, and they want to increase the number of sound effects actively used currently. Then they touched on towns. Players will only be allowed to change class within towns. The NPCs are scattered around the town to make it so certain areas don't get overcrowded. They want to add player housing to the game and are working to add it in a future update after the game actually goes live. They would also love to include fishing, cooking, and other life skill related activities, but are currently finding it difficult to implement. You'll finally be able to hide weapons in the city, and you'll be able to reduce the amount of players that you can actually see at any given time. Next, they touched on quests. Apparently, players had difficulty understanding where they were required to go for quests. I can kind of concur with this, as I did find it a little bit difficult questing within the game. Apparently they are working on fixing this issue, which is a very welcome change. Then they addressed the field map. Players wanted to not die if they fall off a cliff. Personally though, I actually found that feature absolutely hilarious, and I am glad that Bandai Namco have no intentions of changing it. Players also wanted more XP gain from killing monsters, and that was very quickly rejected, as this game is in no way a game that is going to enforce grinding. Players want easier access to various areas, and they are attempting to work on that as well. They're working on adjusting how the minimap works. They expressed that they had no intention of ever allowing maps within dungeons, but after many complaints, they're working on adding in mini-maps for players to make it a little easier to explore and complete. Then they touched on several issues players were having regarding channels, zones, and partying with other players. Mainly that players couldn't really navigate to the same instance of the zone due to whatever reason during the closed beta, and they are going to work heavily on making alterations to make playing with other players much easier. Then they touched on the UI, the HUD, and the menu. From what I could tell, players wanted to be able to filter messages within the log menu as they found it a little difficult differentiating between what was what. Players also want to be able to display additional quests since the quest display selection is quite limiting, to which they have agreed to expand. They're reworking various items' descriptions to better explain what each does. They're also working on altering fonts and font colors for convenience. Next, they went on to discuss chatting, emotes, and other social features. They plan on overhauling the friends system to make it easier to engage one another and add friends. They're also working on making it easier to interact with other players. There will be additional emotes, additional gestures added over the course of the game. They also want to add cooperative gestures that can be done with other players, such as dancing. Then they touched on collection, crafting, scouring, and fusion a little bit. Essentially, they're making it easier to sort through items and are providing a more convenient way of crafting that doesn't require as many steps to complete and is a lot easier overall to use. I didn't really find much issue with the crafting aspect of the game, really, and it was pretty straightforward, but apparently some people had an issue with it. Next, they addressed the camera. Players want more draw distance, but Bandai Namco have stated that that will create more problems than benefit. They're reworking how the lock-on system functions, at least pertaining to the camera though, during combat. Then there was some more general feedback. They're working on increasing the duration of the day so that players can enjoy it for longer periods of time, as they thought that the night came far too quickly. They also want to support ultra-wide monitors and 4K resolution. They're attempting to fix full screen issues, and yeah, that covers pretty much everything. And woo, that was quite a few updates. I don't even know how long this video has gone on for so far, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes by this point. Now, Bandai Namco have not expressed whether another closed beta is going to take place, and if one is going to take place, when specifically it will. They also made absolutely no mention of when the next live stream is going to take place, or if there is in fact another live stream that is going to take place. But this is everything we know thus far. This is pretty much everything we have to look forward to right now. Honestly, I would not really expect the next live stream to be really that far off, considering they have been pretty good about the flow of information over the development cycle of the game. What do you guys think though? Are you more or less excited based off of the direction of the game you see it moving? Let me know down in the comments below and let's talk about it. Anyway guys, that is it for me. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you all next time.
Peace.